Imagine a world where your boy becomes infected with plague on the very day Nurgle first shows up to the party. You don't have to, because I'm sick, and this timing is miserable. But the show must go on, and I shall become a vector for his disease. Oh, joyous Rotfather, we thank you for your blessings, and for your campaign mechanics, which we shall cover in detail right about meow. We're definitely keeping busy, I'll say that, and I want to thank each and every one of you for the support over the last few months. You guys have been awesome, and there's tons more on the way, so keep it coming. Really appreciate it. So, I've had the opportunity to get acquainted with Nurgle and see how his campaign stacks up against the other Chaos Gods, and though I'm not sure his stuff is as outwardly ridiculous and game-breakingly busted as the others seem on paper, they're very thematic and insidious, and it feels like his features kind of bubble beneath the surface, not really blowing you out of the water, not completely wowing you or seeming incredibly strong right from the word go, until all of a sudden they just kinda get out of control. And from there, you take off and start pooping on kids. Literally. It's okay to do that in the Warhammer world. I don't recommend doing that in real life. Might get you in a fair bit of trouble. Fair warning on that front, don't poop on kids IRL. Life lessons with Indie Pride. Don't get me wrong though, there's some super interesting stuff here that will make Nurgle play quite unlike any other faction in the trilogy, so let's dive right in and take a look. So the first thing I want to point out is that Nurgle settlements are not like the strongholds of the other races, because Nurgle is not a builder of monuments or fortifications or shrines. He's a builder of the self. His great works are spread through the bloodstreams of his followers. His lands are choked with filth, overgrown, desiccated husks still teeming with unnatural life, and just like the garden that surrounds his manse in the realms of chaos, his settlements grow and spread like creeping vines in an endless cycle of death and rebirth. So Nurgle buildings are not upgraded. You don't invest money into making them better. They grow, they reach maturity, they wither, and they die, starting all over again from the base state in cycles, churning out units automatically every few turns, which frees up money for lots of cool other stuff. You don't have to invest in the buildings themselves, but it also means your power waxes and wanes, ebbing and flowing during the early game, possibly delaying the power spike you might see early for Khorne and Tzeentch. What you're going to want to do here is bum rush the buildings, techs, and plagues that decrease these cycle times, meaning your top tier troop choices get added to the pool more often, and you spend more time in that hyper-growth stage when your structures are generating more money and corrupting the area more effectively. So your settlements will naturally evolve over time without you doing anything at all, spewing forth new monsters into the world. But this is where Thrones of Britannia comes into play, which might have you a little bit confused here. Do you guys remember that muster system from ye olde England, where regiments were recruited immediately, but started out at maybe only a quarter or half strength, slowly replenishing to full to simulate the levies coming in from all over the countryside? Well, same thing for Nurgle here, just they'll be growing limbs and eyeballs back as they materialize from primordial goo. Pretty metal. Plague demons of all shapes and sizes are summoned directly to their parent armies from a global pool, ready to fight, but they won't be at full strength yet. So another important focus for you will be stacking casualty replenishment, so those muster times are shortened considerably. And Nurgle is very much like the undead in that respect. They're going to be slow, shambling hordes of zombie fodder, with a big focus on healing and summons in battle and casualty replenishment out of battle. You're not going to have a raised dead pool, but you will be able to recruit from that global recruitment pool, and you'll be able to get some awesome stuff from anywhere on the campaign map, which is great. And this will all be building towards the late game where you'll be able to fill and refill armies at what's being called an alarming rate once you control many settlements on the campaign map. Now, we already mentioned plagues, and if you felt like Clan Pestilence was pretty good at the whole spreading of disease, you ain't seen nothing yet, because this is really the core of the Plague Father's campaign mechanics right here, seeding the earth with the boils of corruption, making it easier for his homies to move in. The Plague Cauldron is your command center where you construct each new disease, just like Kugath and Nurgle do in the lore, and they'll take ingredients, mix them on up, and test them on the unlucky mortals who happen to land on their warpath. At the top left, you choose one of 5 base plagues, and then further customize them with up to 2 additional symptoms, conferring bonuses to your armies and debuffing enemies. The 5 plagues are Pox, which decreases cycle time for friendly buildings and increases growth for friendly settlements; Bubos, for reducing casualty replenishment and increasing attrition of enemies while they're under siege; Egg, which applies attrition to enemy armies and reduces their campaign movement range, Rot, which adds Nurglings to your recruitment pool, and Palsy, which reduces melee attack of enemy armies. So you take those 5 base plagues and modify them with symptoms to create your own by spending infections, which are earned like every other pool resource in the game. Seems like every Game 3 faction has their own version of some unique resource, and they all tend to do one thing and one thing only. But of course, a plague isn't very useful if it doesn't have a vector through which it spreads, so once you've made the perfect concoction, you can either have a plague cultist take it to your enemies straight up, similar to the Doom scheme, right, for the Skaven, where you march him to Altdorf, he blows up, and the city automatically becomes impacted by your melees, or you can directly infect your own armies or settlements at a significantly reduced cost of infection points. Basically paying through the nose to ensure it hits immediately, or paying less upfront to passively spread corruption and more slowly cause problems for nearby adversaries. Once you've unlocked all symptoms, you get access to the big bad recipes for the truly killer diseases, like Nurgle's Rot and the Black Plague, and these are well and truly nasty. From a lore perspective, the rot is grotesque on the physical side, bloating, curdling, and distending the victim until their eyes grow together like a freakish cyclops and a horn sprouts from their head. But it's also a spiritual disease which erodes their very soul. Only when death finally claims them are they reborn within the Garden of Nurgle as a plague bearer, a lesser demon of decay. And it is through this foul pox that our friendly neighborhood grandfather keeps his army stocked and ready for more conquest. Now remember from our Tzeentch and Khorne videos, all demonic factions have access to unholy manifestations and cults tied to global corruption. Nurgle spreads his own brand of corruption much quicker than the other Chaos Gods, kind of what he does, and that means you'll get access to these abilities earlier. Pestilent Growth is unlocked from the start, giving a 20% replenishment rate boost to any army for 2 turns, while disabling their campaign movement. Probably an extremely useful ability when you're first mustering an army from the Ether, I would think. You recruit a Lord, you recruit your Plague Drones, and Beasts, and Toads, and Heralds, and whatever else, all in one go from that global recruitment pool. They'll all be severely damaged at the start, then you pop Pestilent Growth, and your casualty replenishment rate skyrockets. 20% is huge, makes it way faster to repair damaged units, and you'll be stacking that up with skills and texts as well from your lords and from your tree. So it wouldn't surprise me if Nurgle armies can get pretty close to 1 turn replenishment even after massive fights where you take all kinds of casualties. The Blessing of Nurgle requires 1,000 global corruption, increasing the chance of plague spreading in local province by 30% for 3 turns, but disabling campaign movement, which, hard to know how useful that will be without knowing exactly how powerful these plagues can get and how much the AI actually cares about them, and that's kind of the big point right there, because oftentimes in Warhammer 2, AI just ignores attrition and doesn't really give a shit. So if it doesn't really impact them, then even if they're really powerful on paper, who cares? Exponential Growth is the third ability, unlocked at 2,000 global corruption, increasing growth in the local province by 200 and decreasing recruitment costs by 20% for the target army for 3 turns. Finally, we have Nurgle's Visitation, requiring 3,000 global corruption, gifting a random plague to every army and settlement in the same province as the target army, but disabling movement for the duration. That's province, by the way, not region. So if Kislev has 6 stacks bearing down on Prague, and 2 more stacks 1 region over, you could hit them all simultaneously, which could absolutely cripple a faction if you get some lucky rolls on the symptoms. And remember that each of these manifestations get even stronger if you're Ascendant in the Great Game. So even though we're lacking information on just how deadly these plagues can get, the fact that you can have tons of different strains ripping through the mortal populace the world over, and they get amplified the more you're investing in them, you can probably do some pretty filthy stuff to factions without even meeting them on the battlefield, which is cool and thematic and pretty much exactly what the Plague Father is all about. The plague cults themselves aren't super interesting. They grant a bunch of infections you can spend on your diseases or starting another random plague, but mostly it's more of the same here, and the tech tree is focused heavily on improving your diseases, unlocking new symptoms, and adding spells to your Great Unclean Ones, the greater demons that will serve as your most powerful single-entity monsters, corpulent beasts that are quite terrifying to behold. Really cool note on your army abilities here, which I don't believe we have information on exactly what they do yet, but they'll be charged up based on how much damage your units take, and Nurgle is built for tough around healing and survivability, so you can take a lot of punishment. More importantly though, they each have a chain property, meaning they will spread to nearby units rather than in a set AoE like we're used to. So based on proximity, I'm assuming these contagions can hit your entire army, giving everybody huge bonuses, or they can fizzle out and barely do anything if you haven't positioned your army to maximize those boons. Same thing for your opponents. Even in battle, these abilities will spread throughout their ranks if you cast them at the right time. So unlike a Soul Stealer, which has a set 35 or 40 meter radius that it will hit, think of the spell as hitting a single unit, and then if there's something else in close proximity, it will spread to them. So you can spread all of that to your army in a good way, or you can spread it to the enemy army in a bad way and basically debuff the entire force if you cast it at the right time. Adds quite a bit of tactical nuance there that I like quite a bit. But the real money shot is right here, ladies and gentlemen. We got the Exalted Plague Bearers of Nurgle, Forsaken, Beasts of Nurgle, and Nurglings highlighted at the top. But in the fog, in the gray, there is a Cyclopean Soul Grinder of Nurgle. Definitely has its own corpulent model there, looking quite unique and tasty. May come equipped with the Phlegm Bombardment special rule, and right next to them are two very expensive variants of the Plague Drones of Nurgle, which may be the unit I'm most excited for on this particular roster. And the first variant is throwing what looks like a Death's Head. This is a biological grenade thrown into the ranks of enemies and using corrosive gas, acid, disease to dominate the opponents that way. And then there's maybe an exalted version that's focused more on plague swords and just dealing damage in melee. Next to them, kind of hidden partially, are the Pox Riders. We can see them down below as well. There are Plague Toads, that's a feral version, and then the Pox Riders are the Plague Toads ridden by Plague Bearers into battle. See some Chaos Spawn, see a feral version of the Rotflies on the right of this army, and then to the left, we got a Great Unclean one, and we've got a Herald of Nurgle 2 with a cultist that will likely be spreading some disease and casting the lore of the Plague God. So I'd say for this one, Nurgle's mechanics hit all the right notes here. They have a unique recruitment system, a unique settlement system, lots of fluffy and thematic features, and a playstyle all their own, spreading disease to the four winds and slowly whittling away at the opposition through the Rotfather's favorite toys. Things are already shaping up nicely for Nurgle, and we'll have lots more to cover soon, so hope you guys enjoyed this look at his campaign mechanics, and I'll see you all in the next video. Indie Pride, signing out for now. Have a good one, guys.